Hi, everyone. This is Steve Delasan. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am thrilled and excited to be joined by Michael Lamonsoff, the CEO and founder of the law offices of Michael S. Lamonsoff. Michael, thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve.
We're excited to have you here today. I think one of the questions I get asked most about you is Michael the Bull, right? Mm-hmm. Where did you get known as the Bull?
Well, I have a tail and I have horns. When I was a kid, I would protect other kids that were being bullied by other kids. And they started calling me the Bull because anytime there was a problem, I would step in and I would help them, in my own way.
That.
Yeah. As time passed and I became a lawyer, my clients would also say, hey, you're like a bull in the courtroom. And so I started getting all these wooden bulls. I have bulls from every part of the world in my office.
Yep. When you walk in your office, you see the giant bulls right there.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you were born and raised.
So I was born in East Flatbush,
okay,
and I was raised there till like early teens, maybe, or before that. My father, who was in the Army, he was
Sure.
an officer, didn't really have much money, but made enough money finally to move us out to Long Island, into a small town where into a small house where you could reach out a window and touch the house next to us. So it wasn't a palace, but for us it was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Michael, tell us about what you were like growing up.
I was a badass.
I don't doubt that.
Yes, I was. I was always in trouble. My father taught me two things. If he taught me anything, he taught me one, loyalty is the most important thing to people and in your relationships with people. And the other thing, what he taught me was how to try to stay out of jail because I got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, those are two great qualities for your dad to teach, especially the loyalty factor, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think in today's world, self-made CEOs are rare. Michael, I know you're self-made. How did you support yourself all those years?
Oh, boy. It was difficult. There was no job that was too dirty. There was no job that was too hard. I started out at 13 years old working in a factory, I was a garbage man. I was a bouncer. I was a bartender. I was a farmhand. You name the work, and I did it. But what was interesting, I was also a porter. I just realized, just forgot about that. I think I actually portered in this building back then, a long time ago. So, there was nothing that I wouldn't do to make money, including boxing. I was a boxer, and I'd fight professionals, and they would give me $100 to fight a professional. You know what a professional is going to do to an amateur, right?
Yeah.
He wants to beat the heck out of you. So for $100, I had the crap beaten out of me.
Yep.
But it got me through, and it also allowed me to pay for my education throughout. It was a little bit difficult, having full-time jobs and also, doing things that really were tiring. But it got me through, and it got me through, college. I paid for college. I paid for law school. I paid for graduate school. Everything was paid for by me.
That's awesome.
Everything was paid for by my hard work, and I'm proud of that. And also, it makes me more relatable to, people who come in to my office and have jobs that are difficult, and that, no matter how difficult that job is, I say, okay, you were this, but hey, I did this. So,
those are the lessons in hard work that you can't learn in the classroom. So it's definitely inspiring to hear that.
Correct.
Well, what kind of hard work did it take to get you to where you are today? And what kind of sacrifices did you make along the way?
A lot. I mean, a lot. I came from really nothing. And so, the first day I opened up my office, it was about the size of, 6 by 10 with no windows, and I had not a penny in my pocket. Yet, I had to work really, really hard because without money, coming from mommy and daddy, I didn't have that. I had to work really, really hard. Sometimes as I was growing, I would work almost through the night, almost every single night, through the night, fall asleep in my chair and get up again and go back to work.
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult thing. I don't even know or remember the late 1990s and the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, all the hard work thankfully paid off, though.
It took 20 years. I was working my butt off.
Yep.
Okay, and obviously it paid off. So it was difficult, but I was very, very single-minded. I knew what I wanted. I had this dream of a law firm that I wanted to build, and I would let nothing interrupt or interfere with that dream. And so I knew that in order to do that, I would have to really work my butt off.
Yeah.
I did. And I ended up growing from one person, V, a solo practice, to over 100 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's inspiring because you hear about, obviously, you're a true testament to hard work pays off, right? All those years that you put in, it's amazing to see the law firm you built today. So that's something definitely to be proud of and very inspiring for everybody that's tuning in.
I am proud. I'm also proud of my people. I've got some great, great people.
That's awesome. That's great to have, too. Speaking of success, Michael, I know you've won some of the highest multi-million awards for your clients. You have a whole section on your website called the Bulls Millionaires Club. What drives you to get results like that?
The same thing that drove me to beat up the bullies when I was a kid. A lot of these people who are really badly injured, they're getting shafted by these big multinational insurance companies. I love fighting them. And I love winning for my clients, period. Okay? And most fun thing about this whole thing is giving that check to that client who's been injured. Okay? And you know that there is no way that that check, no matter how many millions of dollars it is, will make up for the injuries that they had and what happened to them in the past. But it's some form of justice that they get, and I really enjoy the fight. I enjoy also winning for the clients. And you know what? I enjoy making millions for myself as well. So
absolutely. Well, they're lucky to have you, and I'm sure that's a really rewarding feeling getting to hand that check over to them too.
There's nothing better. There's just nothing better, you know. Of course, it doesn't replace what they've lost, but you know, the smile on their face and the confidence in knowing that for the rest of their life they can take care of their family, they can do whatever they want to do with their lives, and that is an amazing thing.
That's awesome, and it's thanks to you. So they're very lucky that they found you to be able to help them with that fight too. I understand you have 2 masters in psychology.
That's correct.
How has that benefited you being an attorney?
Oh, in many, many ways. Okay, first of all, with my clients, you know, I can understand their plight. I can understand how they feel, their feelings. You know, we have many different practice areas. I'm just giving you 4 examples.
Sure.
Okay. We have a practice area called sexual assault, sexual abuse. And it's people, men and women, boys and girls, who've been sexually abused by somebody older. And maybe even the institution that person works for, the perpetrator that did this to this child or adult, okay? Sure. We hold them responsible. So on intake, you know, you have to be very, very, very careful when you speak to somebody who's suffered from some kind of sexual abuse.
100%.
I can read them. I can understand for their body language. You know, when I was a social worker before I became an attorney. And so I would counsel victims, survivors, really, of sexual assault. And that carried into my training as an attorney. You know, now when I have cases of sexual assaults or sexual abuse, I know exactly how to talk to that survivor. Yeah. I know when to slow down when things get a little too hard on them. Yeah. You know, some of them really emote. They have PTSD. They have all kinds of problems, mental health issues as a result of the trauma. So I know how to do an intake with them. I know how to make them feel empowered, because a lot of them really are seeking empowerment because power was taken away from them when they were sexually abused. That power that was taken away from them is the ultimate power. You know, to have somebody do something like that to a person, and that person feels that. So I also, in the courtroom, in preparing the cases, I know how people will respond to situations like this. Juries, for example, judges, and so forth. So I know how to pull at their heartstrings. When I say that, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean some of them, some judges and some juries, and they become a little bit insensitive because they don't really understand the topic.
Totally, yeah.
So I do know the topic very well. I do know how to make them empathize with my clients. I do know because they don't know sometimes, and it's a very, very hard thing. And some jurors and judges and so forth, you know, have been survivors themselves. Yeah. And it's very, very difficult for them. I've had that happen too. people on juries and so forth. It becomes a very, very sensitive issue.
For sure. It's a great quality to have, and I'm sure you give the clients the confidence and reassurance having you in their corner too by having those skills. So that's a great quality.
100%. It's extremely important that they trust you. There's always going to be trust issues, and I get past that.
Awesome. Well, what's your biggest pet peeve when it comes to running a major law firm, especially here in New York?
There's many, but I'll just name a few.
Sure.
There's a few people, I won't call them competitors because I don't think there possibly can be competitors to me. I feel like I dominate personal injury. But there's a few. There's one guy from Florida, with a wacky Southern accent, who started firms up here so to make a money grab. There's another guy from Philadelphia who shouts at you on his social media, but he doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. He's got a wacky name. So they're not New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. They don't know the laws in New York.
Yep.
And these outsiders, what they do is they open these firms here.
Sure.
And the facade is these lawyers that they hire by the hundreds, right? But they're not good because they don't really care about who they hire because they're not here in New York hiring them. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a problem because whenever we fire them, we take a look at the files and we're like, oh my God, what kind of work is this? They don't know what they're doing. So pet peeve is that these guys that are out of state, really, they don't know. They're outsiders. They don't know New York. I'm a born and bred New Yorker.
100%.
I know New York.
Yeah.
Now, what I would tell your radio audience is,
Sure.
I want to give your radio audience, some advice. If you are naive enough not to come to me,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and you've been injured in an accident, don't go to one of these firms that the owners are from some other state. They're just advertising here. And the way to find that out is just look up the owner of the firm, where he lives, where he's from. You'll find some deceitful information. For example, they'll list all these awards they've had, but they're in other states. They're not here. All you have to do is look at the Bulls Millionaires Club and compare those awards and those settlements,
Sure.
okay, to their settlements and awards here in New York. And they're not going to do anything close to what we're doing.
Yeah, New Yorkers want a New Yorker fighting for them. So
That's right.
I couldn't agree more.
In New York, you want a New York hot dog, right? You don't want one from Florida, right? You
That's
want
right.
one from Philadelphia? No. You want a cheesesteak from Philadelphia, right?
That's right. So I know we talked about this a little bit, about social media. How does it feel being a lawyer in the age of social media and influencer culture?
Well, I love it. I do love it. I actually have my social media manager here in this office, who's extraordinary. And the reason I love it is because I'm able to educate people on what to do and what not to do in case they're injured in an accident,
Mm-hmm.
and also what to look for so that they don't get into an accident.
Sure.
People don't need to be hurt unnecessarily. So if you watch some of my social media stuff,
Sure.
what you're going to see is, what not to do, what to look out for. Don't get injured. There's no reason for it.
And where can people follow you on social?
MSL Legal.
Great. I love following you guys. You have great content. I think the other great thing is people actually get to see you and they get to see the authentic Michael and feel that confidence having you represent
Well, I
them.
bark a lot. I do bark a lot.
But it shows them your drive. What are 3 qualities that you found out about you that helped you become a successful CEO?
Easy. Drive, tenacity, and George Washington.
Why George Washington?
Well, George Washington was one of the greatest leaders, one of the greatest generals of not just our time, obviously, but of all time.
Yep.
And people think that George Washington was so special because he handed his sword back to Congress and was not Napoleonic-like, okay, trying to take over the world and so forth. George Washington was beloved by everybody. That's not what made him a great leader. What made him a great leader was the fact that he would listen to his generals. So he had some extremely able generals and officers like Alexander Hamilton, for example. And he would listen to them, and yes, he would get advice, and he would either take the advice, or he wouldn't. And he was not so arrogant that he would say, we're going this way. We're gonna go back and we're gonna attack and we're gonna get Manhattan back. No, they went back down to Virginia, down south, and obviously won the war there. He listened to the French advice, but he also carried the veto power. He was not a pushover. He just wanted to know enough information to make a really good decision that was good for the country back then.
I love that. I love that motto. So for those that are tuning in, what advice would you have for young aspiring lawyers?
Well, we have a lot of them because we take on interns and we hire some young lawyers too. But I
Great.
always tell them the same thing. Trust yourself, but don't trust everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Verify from other people, paralegals that are doing work for you, whoever's doing work for you. Trust them, but verify their work. Don't ever put it out any work that's not actually looked at by you and verified by you, or else your name is on the line.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice.
Yes.
So what's next for the Bull?
I made a reference before about, that I don't think I really do have competitors, okay, in New York. Well, there are people that try to compete. Let's put it that way. But I don't want them even having the ability to try to step up. I want to dominate New York. In other words, I mentioned before that there are some people, some attorneys out there that think they're competing with me, but
Mm-hmm.
they're really not. But I know how good we are. I know how good I am. And I don't want people to get the short end of the stick. And I see that when I fire other attorneys, they're really being underserved. So I want to dominate New York. I want to bring in the best attorneys. We already have amazing, amazing attorneys, but I want to bring in more. And we're growing, and we're growing, and we're growing. Sexual assault is a huge, huge field for us, practice area. I know that we can really help people out there.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing with our audience your story, your journey. We always love having you come in at iHeart. I think it's a true testament of when you put in the hard work, what you could get. And I think it's even more inspiring to see your fight and your drive and your passion for your clients, especially for those New Yorkers.
Love it.
So, Michael,
I do.
thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please tune in next week for next week's edition of CEOs You Should Know.